Mangwanani Mwalelepo Vukenjani Kwaswanawe Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening in the SADC region and beyond. Today is Wednesday, the 15th of September. Every year, 15th September is celebrated as International Day of Democracy after being established in 2007 through a resolution passed by the United Nations General Assembly. In the words of the United Nations, International Day of Democracy provides an opportunity to review the state of democracy in the world. Democracy is as much a process as a goal, and only with the full participation of the international community can the ideal democracy be made into a reality. The International Day of Democracy owes its existence to the Universal Declaration on Democracy, which was adopted on September 15, 1997 by the Inter-Parliamentary Union, which is an international organization of national parliaments. The first such celebration took place in 2008.
All right, today is also Make a Hat Day. Up until the 20th century, hats played an incredibly important role in fashion and attire, arguably much more than so today. In the 19th century, felt was a common material for hats, and Felt Hat Day encourages us all to don a felt hat in tribute to this historically significant but now somewhat neglected accessory. And here's more on that. It is Wednesday, the 15th of September, and here are the news making headlines. A probe in Ethiopia's Tigray did not reach site of a home attack. The United Nations Human Rights Chief has said a highly awaited joint investigation into abuses in Ethiopia's Tigray conflict was unable to deploy to the site of one of the deadliest attacks, the alleged massacre of several hundred people in the holy city of Ahom. Michelle Bachelet told the UN Human Rights Council on Monday that deployments to eastern and central Tigray, where witnesses have accused Ethiopian and allied forces from neighboring Eritrea of some of the worst abuses of 10 months, could not proceed. The war saw a dramatic shift in late June when the Tigray forces retook much of Ethiopia's northern Tigray region and Ethiopian and allied forces withdrew. The joint report will be published on the 1st of November, a delay from its one expected release this month.
Gross abuses, armed groups killing and recruiting in Niger. An increasing number of children are being killed and abducted in Niger as the conflict in the country's western Tillaberi region, bordering Mali and Burkina Faso, has worsened significantly, a human rights group said on Monday. The London-based human rights group pointed the finger at the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara and Al-Qaeda-affiliated Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin for causing the devastating impact on children in the region. The report said armed groups have killed more than 60 children in Niger's tri-border area in 2021, adding ISGS appears responsible for most of the killings. Meanwhile, on the border with Burkina Faso, JNIM also intensified its recruitment efforts since the start of the year by focusing on young men and boys, said the report. Such armed groups, Amnesty said, have found it easy to operate in Niger's border areas as they have been evacuated by government forces.
6 die in an ambush on Burkina Faso military convoy. An ambush on the Burkina Faso military convoy escorting fuel tankers from a gold mine near the border with Niger has left 6 officers dead, officials said. 7 people were wounded after what the regional government in eastern Burkina Faso said was an attack by suspected jihadists. 2 years ago, 39 people were killed when a convoy of vehicles from the same mine was targeted. That incident shut down the production for almost a year. Since 2015, attacks in the country by groups linked to Islamic State group and Al-Qaeda have killed more than 1,500 people and forced more than 1 million people from their homes.
Nigeria jailbreak in Kaba, prisoners on the run after armed raids. Some 240 prisoners have escaped after unidentified gunmen attacked a facility in Nigeria's Kogi state, officials say. The attackers blew up the prison's perimeter fence to gain entry, according to the Reuters news agency. Nigeria's prison service says the gunmen were heavily armed and fought a fierce gun battle with the guards. Eyewitnesses told local media that 2 security officers were killed at the Security Custodial Center in Kaba, but this has not been officially confirmed. Investigations are underway to find the escaped prisoners and the gunmen who freed them. The authorities say the majority of them were in pre-trial detention. In recent years, Islamist militant group Boko Haram has raided prisons to free inmates on several occasions. Many of the inmates in Kaba are suspected Boko Haram fighters, but the authorities say it is not known who was behind Sunday's jailbreak. In April, more than 1,800 inmates were freed by gunmen who ambushed Owerri police headquarters in southeastern Nigeria. Police blamed that attack on a banned separatist group.
In our next story, over 77.9 million COVID vaccination administered across the continent. As of September the 14th, confirmed cases of COVID-19 from 55 African countries reach over 8 million, while over 77 million vaccinations have been administered across the continent. Reported deaths in Africa reach over 200,000 and over 7 million people have recovered. South Africa has the most affected cases of over 2 million and 85,000 people have died. Other most affected countries are Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, Libya, and Kenya. The numbers are compiled by the Center of Systems Science and Engineering at the Johns Hopkins University using statistics from the World Health Organization and other international institutions, as well as national and regional public health departments.
In our next story, will former South African President Jacob Zuma be sent back to jail? South Africa's opposition Democratic Alliance has filed papers in the Pretoria High Court seeking to overturn the medical parole issued to former President Jacob Zuma, who is serving a 15-month sentence for contempt of court. Zuma's corruption trial, which due to resume last Friday, has been postponed until September 21. He is due to appear in person then at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. DA leader John Steenhuisen says their application to have the parole overturned goes beyond Zuma. The party is hoping that the report of the Zondo Commission on State Capture will result in a number of ANC cadres being jailed. It was Zuma's refusal to appear before this commission that led him to being jailed for contempt of court. We don't want the ANC ready to hand get out of jail free cards to ensure their people don't face the sentences they deserve for the pain and suffering and the damage they have inflicted on the body politic, states Steenhuisen.
In our next story, a flood in Sudan has killed over 80 people. Floods following heavy rains in Sudan have killed more than 80 people and damaged or destroyed tens of thousands of homes, an official said on Monday. A total of 84 people were killed and 67 others injured in 11 states across Sudan since the beginning of the rainy season, said Abdel Jalil, spokesperson of Sudan's National Council for Civil Defense. Some 8,408 houses have also been destroyed and more than 27,200 damaged across Sudan. Torrential rains usually fall in Sudan between June and October, and the country faces severe flooding every year, wreaking properties, infrastructure, and crops.
Dominic Raab urged to block new Rwandan diplomat amid human rights concerns. Dominic Raab has been urged to block the appointment of Rwandan diplomat in London for his alleged role in detaining a government critic. Paul Rusesabagina, who was portrayed in the Hollywood film Hotel Rwanda, used his Kigali hotel to save hundreds of ethnic Tutsis during the 1994 genocide. Rwanda's proposed new High Commissioner has insisted his role in getting Mr. Rusesabagina to the country was legal. Johnson Businye was, until recently, Rwanda's justice minister. A spokesman for the Rwandan government said Mr. Businye had served with distinction in his former roles and added that Mr. Rusesabagina's arrest for terrorism offenses complied with all domestic and international law. After spending 8 years at the Justice Ministry, Mr. Businye was abruptly removed from his post earlier this month by Rwandan President Paul Kagame. Mr. Rusesabagina, a Belgian citizen, now with U.S. residency, has been a vocal critic of Rwanda's authoritarian president. The 66-year-old former hotel manager, who is reportedly in ill health, faces various charges of terrorism and founding an armed group responsible for terror attacks in Rwanda.
Nigeria faces growing cholera outbreak of COVID cases. Nigeria is seeing one of its worst cholera outbreaks in a year, with more than 2,300 people dying from suspected cases as the West African nation struggles to deal with its impact alongside the coronavirus pandemic. A total of 69,000 people suspected cholera infections had been recorded as of the 5th of September in a 25 out of 36 country states and the capital Abuja, according to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. At least 2,323 people have died linked to the disease in 2021 so far, rather, the center said. And there are concerns total figures may also be undercounted, given that the many affected communities are in hard to reach areas. Children between the age of 5 and 14 are also the most affected age groups around in the current health crisis, which has a case fatality ratio of 3.3%, more than double what the coronavirus 1.3% in Nigeria. Nigeria is still facing a third wave of the pandemic, mainly driven by the Delta variant, and authorities are intensifying efforts to vaccinate a population amongst whom less than 1% have received both doses of the COVID-19 shot.
Sticking with COVID lockdowns blamed for increase in teenage pregnancies. There are signs that teenage pregnancies are on the rise in several African countries due to lockdowns imposed during the pandemic. International aid organizations say there is cause for concern and are warning of the long-term consequences early pregnancies have on young girls. According to UNICEF, difficulties during pregnancy and childbirth are among the leading causes of death among young women between 15 and 19. Meanwhile, in South Africa, the number of children born to teenage mothers in the most populous province, Gauteng, has increased by 60% since the COVID-19 pandemic began. The high rates of teenage pregnancy has also set back South Africa's fight against HIV and AIDS. According to Marumo Sekobela, a health and nutrition manager at Save the Children South Africa, infection rates are quite high among pregnant women. In principle, most young people, especially those in the cities, are aware of the risks and impacts of early pregnancy, Sekobela says. But in rural areas or informal settlements, education and development are just not the same.
Africa in prime position to profit from camel's milk. As nutritionists worldwide touted the health benefits for camel milk, its commercial potential is bargaining with 80% of the world's camel population living in Africa. A team of scientists from Australia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates conducted a review of research into camel's milk from different sources and published their findings in the Saudi Journal of Biological Science in May. The study says that camel milk is healthier than cow's milk because it contains less fat, can lower cholesterol levels, is likely to produce allergic reaction, and is richer in some vitamins and minerals. Camel milk also contains certain substances such as bioactive peptides and enzymes not present in cow milk, which account for its traditional use for treatment of diseases such as tuberculosis and asthma.
Rwanda to plant over 43 million trees in new campaign. The Minister of Environment, Jeanne d'Arc Mojawa Maria, has revealed that the plan by the government to plant over 43 million tree seedlings across the country as a way of fighting desertification. These are to be planted during the forthcoming tree planting campaign set to start next month. The EU campaign that was launched in Gahanga sector in Kikukiro district will be run for a week under the theme Ambition and Action. At least 100 trees will be planted in different locations such as schools, private gardens, among others, during the one-week campaign. It seeks to raise awareness on the importance of trees and forests in the mitigation and adaptation to climate change on one side and restoring the degraded land. At least $49.6 million has been secured to green the eastern provinces that are vulnerable to drought. Rwanda has committed to restore 2 million hectares of degraded land by 2030. At least 900,000 hectares, or 45% of these, are being restored. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. Now, we know that dogs are man's best friend, but who knew that dogs could also be man's favorite medical assistant during COVID-19? Find out more about that after the break.
Happy Wednesday and thank you very much for joining us. Beagles are known to be one of the best sniffers dog breeds there is. Dr. Anna Marias, Dean of the School of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Namibia, tells Tanya Bause how she and her team trains beagles to identify people who are infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus and thus have COVID-19. Please stay tuned for this interesting visit up next.
My name is Anna Marais. I'm the Associate Dean of the School of Veterinary Medicine at University of Namibia. We have a colony of beagle dogs at the school, which we use for training students to do clinical exams on dogs, take their temperatures, listen to their hearts, practice bandaging. They're responsible for the total care of the dogs. And because we have these dogs, we decided that we would try and train them to sniff COVID and to detect.
When did this dog unit start?
The training dog unit started at the beginning of last year. So the pilot project to see if we could train dogs started at the beginning of last year. And we linked with some universities overseas. We read up, we found the methods. What we do is we train the dogs to sniff a sweat sample from a positive patient. We need that, but the signs consent that they will have a swab under their arm, and the swab is then, everything is sterile. The doctor uses gloves to handle the sweat sample. It gets put into a coloured bottle. It goes under UV to kill any virus that might be on the outside. It gets packed into these things. It's stored in a fridge with us, and we use this bottle with a swab inside to train the dogs. They go into positive and negative samples, go into those cups over there. Our results are really good so far. Our two best dogs are getting over 90% of positive samples correct and 100% of negative samples correct. So they can be used to screen just with a sweat sample, whether a patient is positive or negative. That is where we are now.
Is there like an expiry date? You can train
We find that these samples, the dogs can't detect them anymore after 3 weeks, which is really different to our colleagues in Europe who use the same samples for months. I think it's the conditions in Namibia, you know?
Temperatures.
Yeah, temperatures, how dry it is. All patients in hospital.
Yeah.
We have never tested normal public because we aren't accredited. So the Minister of Health must one day hopefully say that we accept a dog test as a legitimate test in Namibia. Then we can train dogs. What we want to do with this, you know, these people and dogs work here, they belong here. But we want to get policemen with their dogs. We want to get Ministry of Health people with their dogs. Ministry of Environment people with their dogs. They can bring them here every day or 3 times a week or whatever, and then Andre can train them and they can go out and work. So this is like the research project to show that it works. But we are going to deploy our staff and our dogs to work at the airport all day because they work here.
Yeah.
So it's for us, it's a university, it's a research project to show that we can be done. And we know from elsewhere in the world. Our vice chancellor was in at the beginning of the year, and when he landed at Helsinki, he was given quarantine PCR and our dogs sniff. Takes 0.5 of a second. The PCR will take 2 days before you get your results, and quarantine 2 weeks. So, okay, the government has a sniff legitimate test, and we hope our Minister of Health will. Yeah. So what I would like to do is, when there is a queue of people for tests like at a clinic, let them each give us a sweat sample, let the dogs work, and all the negative ones can go home. And then the ones the dogs are positive, we double check with the lab. Okay, so this is one-way glass. They can't see us from that side. So when the dog is fully trained, we will send the dog into work to sniff along the row and indicate, and the handler will be standing here. So there's no chance of the handler subconsciously indicating to the dog it's number 18 or whatever. Because when we train the dog, obviously the handler knows where the positive sample is, because he's got to make them sit and reward them.
Hello, I'm Nina Bridges, and I'm a full-time veterinary nurse at the UNAM Noidam campus.
But in your free time, you also train dogs and play with dogs.
Yes, I assisted with the beagle training. I volunteered for the beagle training program when I first started last year, and I love it.
Why do you do that on your free time?
Because I think it's an amazing opportunity, and I've learned so much from Andre, our trainer. He's taught us all so much about the training. I've been involved with training before, but never to an extent like this. And I find it absolutely interesting. It's fascinating to see a training like this actually take part. I think it's amazing.
My name is Boy Muzo. I'm working here at the campus, School of Veterinary Medicine, as a veterinary paraprofessional. I'm working with the horses at the equine department. But currently I'm training here at the dog detection unit, 3 dogs. This is Amy, but she's not here in Shaka. Yeah, so from how we started to today, I have seen that we are progressing. The success we're seeing, the results that are also here, as you have just witnessed.
You do this on your free time?
Yeah.
Why do you do this?
Actually, I just love working with animals for the first, and then also it's also another way of helping the economy. If we can get this right, and then I know we can save the government a lot of money.
How this works is, dogs have a different scent than we have. We smell somebody's having a braai. A dog smells somebody's having a braai with sheep from the south, with lemon and pepper and tomatoes. So their sense of smell is way beyond that. A normal explosive dog can program between 30 and 40 different scents in his mind. And the combination of those scents. We don't really understand how far these animals can go, and we're not really using them to the full potential. This is basic work for them. Everything in nature goes on pheromones and on a micro level, scent. And we're just using a small part of their brain, a small part of their brain. To do narcotics work, it's easy for these dogs. I mean, we can smell narcotics. We can smell the difference in a positive sample and a negative sample in sweat. They can. We're really underappreciating our dogs. So when you get home, pick your dog and give him a treat. He deserves it.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning as we continue to bring you the news and current affairs happening in the SADC region and beyond. Right now, we're going to cross over to the real Africa, Zambia, and have a chat with Mr. Mike Situla about what's going on there. How are you, Mike?
I'm very well, thank you, Africa. Good morning.
I'm fantastic. Now, I know on Monday you spoke about the Zambian public having questions about the president using the presidential jet, which he had said he wouldn't use. Apparently, there's a response because the ruling party, UPND, says President Hakainde Hichilema will use a commercial flight instead of the presidential jet, to attend the 76th United Nations General Assembly in New York. Tell us about it.
Yes, like you've likely put it, yesterday, party UPND party spokesman, Mr. Cornelius Mitwa, held a media briefing where he did indicate that President Hichilema is going to use commercial flight going to New York to attend the 76th General Assembly. This comes against the background of him having promised Zambians that once he gets into office, he was going to auction the Zambia Air Force plane. That is the plane there in the picture. However, there's still some concerns amongst people who are saying the plane is a property of the Zambian people. If the president doesn't want to use it, let it become part and parcel of the property that Zambians have. In the picture there, that is Mr. Cornelius Mitwa, the UPND spokesman. He's also the provincial minister for Southern Province. So this is basically what the Zambian people are now expecting. But people are also expecting to know how many people are going to be in the presidential entourage going to New York. So those are some of the other questions, because people want to know if indeed the cost will be lesser if the president used the presidential challenger by going through the commercial flight. Then there are also concerns about how they are going to maintain the security for the head of state. As you know, when the president is going out, security is one of the paramount things that they look at.
All right. Now, mine workers yesterday held a peaceful protest demanding uniform salaries at 2 mines owned by Chinese investors. Please get into this story for us.
Yeah, so this is the protest yesterday comes about 3 days ago, again where some on the northern western part of Zambia, 200 over 250 mine workers were suspended from employment. Their case involved uh, where they are disagreeing with management to say they were not aware about them being placed on a scheme. So in the pictures there, those are the miners who staged that peaceful protest. They work for two Chinese-owned mines on the Copperbelt province. So what has happened is that government, through the labor commissioner, he moved in to explain to the workers what the management was doing. Apparently, the reason behind this protest was that the two companies owned by two Chinese firms, more or less like were offering different salaries for work that is done by same category of workers. And this did not go well with the miners who said, we want to have uniform salaries for the job that we are doing. We cannot be doing the similar kind of jobs, then our friends are getting higher than us. But the good part is that when the labor commissioner went there, he did manage to convince the workers, and they are expected to resume operations, normal operations, probably today. Some of them could have started yesterday because the meeting went as far as in the night, trying to make an understanding between the management and the miners.
Okay. Now, on a seemingly good note, Chinese-owned company has invested 300 million US dollars to set up a local fertilizer manufacturing plant. Could you please get into that?
So, agriculture is one of the key developmental activities that the government wants to use. The previous government also prioritized diversification of the agriculture sector. Even the current government is also going the same route. During his address to Parliament, President Hakainde Hichilema last week, that's a Chinese-owned company, wonderful group. And besides them venturing into fertilizer, they are also manufacturing towels in the country. It's one of the first company that is manufacturing towels in the country. They're also manufacturing ceiling boards and the like. They also did partner with government. Also bought some shares in one of these companies where it is one of the leading companies in terms of manufacturing products that were previously imported, but now that is being done locally. So back to what I was saying, President Hichilema did say when he addressed Parliament last week on Friday that in order to boost the agriculture sector, they needed to reduce the cost of inputs such as fertilizer and seeds. So if this company is established a fertilizer manufacturing plant, it means the cost of fertilizer is likely going to go down because 3/4 of the fertilizer that Zambian farmers use, we are importing. So that is the good part of this investment.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing the news as it is from Zambia.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning. Do have a blessed week. Thank you.
We certainly hope to have a blessed week, but prior to that, we want to have a blessed day, or at least a day that feels blessed outside. And one way to find out if that's going to transpire or not is by having a look at the weather forecast up next.
South Africa is back again on lockdown level 2, but vaccination remains a hot topic as Momentum Life Insurance released data stating that only 2% of coronavirus-related death claims in July and August were fully vaccinated. Now, Ari Gouhad, who is in Zanzi, has much more on this story and other news updates. Good morning, Ari. Please take it away.
Yes, a good morning. Very good morning to everyone. Yes, indeed, it's a hot topic in South Africa, like all over the globe. The vaccination, it seems like there's two groups, you for vaccination or against. So it is a hot topic. I think at the moment, the reality in South Africa is from Sunday, South Africa is back on level 2. So that is a little bit easier. Currently, there's less cases of COVID daily, about 2,700 per day at the moment. But yes, the news from Momentum is that they announced their figures, their data, that is for the month of July and August. And Momentum indicated, they say from their research and from the data that they have, only 2 in 100 were fully vaccinated. That is people that unfortunately passed away. So in other words, 98% of death claims were for unvaccinated or partially vaccinated people, individuals. So Momentum paid almost 1 billion South African rand in the 2 months of July, August, just on death claims related to COVID. So that's just one of the insurance companies in South Africa. So it's a massive amount of money that's paid out at the moment. So currently the vaccination process in South Africa, currently there's 15 million vaccinations that has been given, and currently 7 million people, individuals in South Africa, adults, is fully vaccinated. And the plan of the government is to have 70% of the 39 million adults vaccinated by December this year. So that is the target.
All right. Now, the Helen Suzman Foundation has joined the DA in launching a court application to declare the decision to grant former President Jacob Zuma medical parole as being unlawful. Could you please get into that?
Yes, the Helen Suzman Foundation joins the Democratic Alliance. They both approached the courts to have that overturned. I think the background is that Mr. Arthur Fraser, as the head of Recreational Services, did allow, that is Mr. Fraser, he gave medical parole to former President Zuma. That was done while the medical board didn't approve that, or that wasn't what they said that must happen. But Mr. Fraser is within his right. He can give medical parole to any inmate that is serving a term of 24 months or less. So I think the Helen Suzman Foundation, what they're asking for is medical records, etc. Is the procedures followed correctly? I think it comes from way back when the co-accused of Mr. Zuma, Shabir Sheikh, he got medical parole about 15 years ago, and he's still playing golf. So I think that is the frustration, that it's a bit of more of the same. But just also important statement made by the president, for the current president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. He said that he welcomes the parole of former President Zuma.
All right, South Africa heads to the election polls on the 1st of November for the municipal elections, but people are concerned that this might be a super spreader for COVID-19.
Yes, it's for the 1st of November. It's also the date that the grade 12 exams start in South Africa. So that's also under discussion, because they normally use school halls to have those voting as well. So there's a bit of an overlap there. The Department of Education must still make a few statements there, I suppose. But yes, I think it is, the challenge is when you have volumes of people coming together and queuing to vote. It could be a super spreader, as they call it. And that is a challenge at the moment. In 2016, there was a percentage turnout of 58% of the voters that came in to vote. So it's a high volume of people that do come to vote. At the moment, the health and safety measures are being put in place. They have tenders out for 100,000 bottles of sanitizers and disinfectants, and also 1 million masks. And so they're getting ready for the 1st of November, and hopefully all will go well, that it isn't the super spreader process. But obviously we're still in COVID-19, we're level 2, but that is a risk to have elections in this time.
All right, now suspended ANC General Ace Magashule suffered another blow when the Johannesburg High Court dismissed his appeal to have his suspension lifted. Tell us about it.
It's a full bench of the High Court that made that ruling, and it goes back to the suspension of Mr. Magashule, and it is the ANC policy that was the ANC policy went to. They call it the step aside policy. If you're implicated or charged with for criminal reasons, you need to step aside. And Mr. Magashule is officially criminally charged for the asbestos case in the Free State province. So that is the background, and I think also in the news for Mr. Magashule at the moment, unfortunately, is that the Scatter Foundation that he sends students to Turkey, and the news that came through a few days ago is that 21 students, unfortunately, was put out of their accommodation or their dormitories in Turkey. So the Magashule Foundation didn't pay their accommodation. They're there on scholarships, and they owe 13 million in unpaid rent. So Mr. Magashule is under pressure for sure, but his allies say that he's going to challenge the High Court ruling.
Okay. All right, customs at the official Oliver Tambo International Airport reported a bust of drugs ingredients worth 40 million rand. Could you please briefly wrap this story up for us?
Yes, just very briefly, it's good to see that our canine friends outsmart our humans. So it's always nice to see when the canines sniff out all these drugs that needs not to get onto the street. So it's 132 kilograms of calcium hydroxide. It's used to make crystal meth. It's also known as tick. So it's worth about, it's many millions of rand it's worth. But those sniffer dogs sniffed it out. It's not going to be on the streets. 2 people arrested. The flight came in from Addis Ababa, so it's good to see that people were caught bringing in calcium hydroxide to South Africa. Well done to the dogs and to everyone.
All right. Thank you very much, Ari, for bringing us the news from South Africa.
Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye.
All right. I love to see other dogs doing great things.
Dogs are at it.
Yes, yeah. My puppy can only sniff out his next meal. Look at these guys. Oh, all right. This is To Africa. Good morning. After the break, your economic news stories. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. As promised, it's time for us to get into your economic news stories. At least 70% of the working class died without drafting a will in 2019. While more than 50% of working South Africans do not have a will, at least 70% of the working class died without drafting a will in 2019. According to Liberty's senior legal marketing specialist, Faiza Khan, the importance of a valid will forms part of the holistic financial planning process. Khan said a person should have a will from the age of 16, especially people who have assets, children, have partners or policies payable to their estate in writing, signed by the testator and 2 witnesses. Liberty's head of brokers and alternative distribution, Fifi Mompati, said it was concerning that many South Africans believe they will only need a will when they get older. She said a will is a legal document where you stipulate how your assets are to be dealt with when you die. If you die without a will, the Interstate Succession Act comes into play and determines your heirs, she added. In terms of the act, only blood relatives and spouses may inherit from you. So foster children, stepchildren, foster parents, step-parents, and possibly your partner will not inherit.
Kenya Treasury turns down a KQ request for bailout. The National Treasury has rejected a proposal by cash-strapped Kenya Airways for fresh financial bailout estimated at 449.77 million, spelling doom to operations of the loss-making national carrier. Chief Executive Alene Kilavuku told the East African in March the airline proposed a 500 million financial bailout, but the government has only disbursed 227.270 since the last financial year. We are extremely appreciative of the support we have received so far, considering the other many industries the government is supporting in these unprecedented times, Kilavuku said in an emailed response.
All right, now in our next story, German state-owned bank fined for Angolan loan exposed in Luanda leaks. German authorities have imposed a $178,000 fine on state-owned KfW Ipex Bank for facilitating loans to an Angolan brewery linked to Isabel dos Santos, the eldest daughter of the country's former president. The deal was first reported by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and its German media partners in 2020 as part of the Luanda Leaks investigation into the insider deals that made Dos Santos Africa's richest woman. In 2015, KfW Ipex loaned about $55 million to Angola's state-owned bank Banco de Poupança e Crédito, which then loaned the money to Sodiba, Dos Santos beer company. The media partners also revealed that Dos Santos used the loan to buy the brewery and bottle filling systems from German manufacturer Krones AG. In response to the Luanda Leaks findings, Krones AG then told reporters that it did not previously know Dos Santos owned Sodiba. Public records existed for years before the loan that tied the daughter of Angola's autocratic president, Jose Eduardo Dos Santos, to the company.
Emerging markets currency muted ahead of U.S. inflation data. Most EM currencies made muted moves ahead of U.S. inflation data due later in the session. Core inflation is seen rising month on month, while on annual basis it is seen easing slightly. Overall consumer price inflation is expected to dip slightly. This comes ahead of the U.S. Federal Reserve policy meeting next week. A weaker inflation print would fit in the Fed's stand that rising inflation is transitory, raising fears that stimulus tapering, which could hurt the risk asset. Today, data is likely to underpin that the Fed will soon take its foot off the accelerator and will announce and produce in assets purchases, said Yana Parker, a Commerce Bank FX and EM analyst.
All right, no deaths attributed to COVID vaccines in South Africa, while latest data shows they work. New data from the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority and the Department of Health shows that while there have been many reports of common negative side effects from COVID-19 vaccines, none are directly attributed to deaths in the country. According to SAPRA, as of Monday, 13 September, a total of 14,922,954 COVID vaccines had been administered in South Africa. Overall, over 27% of the adult population has been vaccinated. While the government's vaccination drive has visibly ramped up over the last few months, authorities are still hitting hurdles with the spread of misinformation about vaccines and their efficacy, cultivating vaccine hesitancy within the population. Only 2,770 AEFIs have been reported in South Africa, representing 0.02% of all doses administered. Adverse events following immunization are taken very seriously in South Africa, SAPRA said. Momentum Metropolitan said its claims experience to date suggests that people who are not vaccinated are 50 times more likely to die from COVID-19 than fully vaccinated people. 50 times more likely. No one should like those odds.
Yeah.
Yes, get vaccinated. This is Africa Good Morning. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to dive directly into your sports update. In our first story, Grobler interested in being next coach of Zimbabwe. This is exciting. I grew up watching this guy. Former Liverpool and Zimbabwe national goalkeeper Bruce Grobler has expressed his desire to be the next coach of Zimbabwe. His comments come a day after the Zimbabwe FA dismissed Croatian Logaruzic and his coaching team after poor results in the World Cup qualifying. I have been watching the Zimbabwe Warriors for some time, and I have had my CV in there a couple of times to no avail, he told BBC Sport Africa. What I see with this bunch of players in Zimbabwe is the finest players we have had for a long time. This 63-year-old who won 32 caps for Zimbabwe between 1980 and 1998 is convinced the current Warriors squad is underachieving. It's a shame that they are not nurtured and pushed into the right direction, and that drives me insane, he added. ZIFA is set to appoint an interim coach ahead of October's World Cup qualifiers as it searches for a permanent replacement.
South Africa indicates interest to host the FIFA World Cup in December. South Africa is interested in hosting FIFA's Club World Cup in December after Japan withdrew because of COVID-19. South African Football Association President Danny Jordan said on Monday. The South African Football Association must get the government approval to hold the tournament, and meetings with the sports minister were also planned, Jordan said. We all know our position by the end of the week. FIFA announced that last week that Japan had withdrawn because of the pandemic and fears that the tournament could cause a further rise in infection in a country that has just staged a Summer Olympic and Paralympics. South Africa has numerous high-quality stadiums that were built or refurbished for the 2010 World Cup, but any ambition to host the World Cup would depend on its own coronavirus situation. Jordan said South African Football Association had noted the government's indication that it was ready to consider allowing sports fans back into the stadium.
In our next story, Pogba goes from pitch to stage as he joins Burna Boy. Manchester United midfielder Paul Pogba went from helping his team beat Newcastle 4-1 on Saturday to helping out Nigerian music star Burna Boy. Pogba, whose family hails from Guinea, played alongside the returning Cristiano Ronaldo at Old Trafford as the Portuguese superstar scored twice on his second debut for Manchester United. Pogba, who has won the World Cup with France, set up the other two goals and then made his way to the Parklife Music Festival in Manchester and appeared alongside Burna Boy, who was sporting a Manchester United shirt.
Wow, love to see
I
it.
just feel like Burna Boy could have won an Arsenal shirt. Whatever.
Protea women secure first ODI series win in West Indies. The Momentum Proteas secured their first series win in the Caribbean when they chased down 157 with 13.2 overs to compete an 8-wicket win over the West Indies women to take an unassailable 3-0 lead and win the 5-match Women's One-Day International Series with a brilliant performance at the St. John, Antigua on Monday. Notwithstanding 77-run partnership between Rashada Williams and Deandra Dottin, the hosts did not offer much in the innings, and as wickets continued to tumble with a combination of some fine bowling and fielding from the Protea women to bowl them out of the 157. The Protea opening pair of Lizelle Lee and Laura Woolfald were the usual distractive mode in the run chase at the Caldick Cricket Ground.
Truly incredible. That brings us to the end of our sports news updates. After the break, your headlines. Africa Good Morning has been streaming live from 7 a.m., bringing you the news and current affairs from the SADC region and beyond. Now, if you missed our top stories at the top of the hour, or if you need a recap, worry not, here are your headlines. Probe in Ethiopia's Tigray did not reach site of Ahum attack. Gross abuses, armed groups killing and recruiting in Niger. 6 die in ambush on Burkina Faso military convoy. Nigeria jailbreak in Kaba, prisoners on the run after armed raid. At least 70% of the working class died without drafting a will in 2019. Grobler interested in being next coach of Zimbabwe. And you know what, Grobler, I'm interested too. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Wednesday edition of Africa Good Morning. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Do not forget, we welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can email them to us. Our email is agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. Alternatively, we are on Facebook and Twitter. It's at Africa Good Morning. We also have a website that's called One Up To. Please visit us for more content that you love to see. And on that note, it's all my love, all my light.
Until tomorrow, Swera Jakanaka.